So should we talk about something pretty exciting in my world?
No. We're over it.
Yeah. All
Nobody
right,
else cares.
Well, see you guys.
Give me some
Our
Starlink
little
news, man. I
future.
want some Starlink in my life.
Starlink, or like, can I give you some? This could affect Starlink, but this is really big. You ready for this? This is exciting. Here we go. Boom! Look at this. Look at this rendering.
Is that the sexy? The
Yep.
sexy launch pad?
Yes, and there's going to be a few things that we're going to be talking about here. So, for those of you listening, you know that Launchpad 39A is a very historic launch pad that SpaceX has been able to, they took it over. That's where they launched their CRS missions and Falcon Heavy launches from 39A, and they cladded that big, beautiful tower all black. But now, just this morning, this got dropped, and so my news feed was all filled with stuff on this, and this is awesome. There is now going to be a mobile service tower that will come in from the kind of the north side of the pad. So and this actually historically already existed. Previously, the Saturn V had a mobile service structure very much like this that came up from the north side just like this, and attached itself, and it was huge. I mean, this is one of those things like, I don't quite think I realized about this until I made a video about Launchpad azimuths and stuff. But basically, this was a giant tower that connected, and it allowed for technicians to be able to access the entire vehicle while it's on the pad and do all the things. So now SpaceX is working on this cool one. And this plan has all these cool things about it. So a rollback, it's basically a giant rolling building. And this is similar to the Delta IV and Delta IV Heavy pad currently down at, I think it's Launch Complex 37 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, has a building like this that rolls back and moves itself away. So they're able to do, not only like keep weather protection, but they're also able to notice that this picture shows a Falcon Heavy on the pad without the nose cone, without the fairing on top of it. This will allow them to do vertical integration of payloads. So if you think about it, like when the way that Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9 works is when it's inside of that horizontal integration facility. Notice it's called the horizontal integration facility because they lay the rocket down on its side. When that's, they'll lay all the rockets down if it's a Falcon Heavy, and they'll combine them on its side. They roll it out, they connect the payload to it on its side. They roll it out to the launch pad, and they stand it up vertically. Now, the hard part about that is now you have to design a payload. Your satellite has to be able to handle loads, like 1G sitting sideways and hanging off the side of a thing, and then stand it up vertically and handle, 3-4 Gs of acceleration or whatever in that vector too. So that's not always that. It definitely limits your potential for customers. And this is mostly in response to the NSSL launch program, basically the National Security Space Launch Program, that is kind of all started around what's known as the EELV, the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle. So
Need more letters here.
Yes, exactly. This is a whole historic thing of how we ended up with like the Delta II, the Delta IV, and the Atlas V. All came from this Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle. And nowadays it's kind of being renamed because we're not expending vehicle. The Falcon 9 is the Falcon 9 is considered part of the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle, but it's not an expendable launch vehicle. So they're having to rename it that. Anyway, so this is all so that the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy can really be hitting every single checkpoint that the Air Force and or Space Force and or National Security, the NROL, National Reconnaissance Office or whatever, all of those other people that want, really expensive, crazy payloads in space. Now this will basically certify or potentially be able to certify SpaceX to be able to handle any type of launch for the Department of Defense, which is a pretty big deal. And you'll notice one more thing about this. Notice the picture. Do you notice anything different about this Falcon Heavy?
That fairing looks
the fairing looks
different.
Really long.
Yeah, that fairing is huge, much taller. And remember how we've said in a couple times, they can't stretch it anymore because they're at the absolute peak of their fineness ratio. I have to take that back, I guess, because apparently they're looking at stretching the fairing. Yeah.
Or did the graphic designer just get a little excited with the Photoshop?
No, I don't think so. I
The
think
whole picture is just squeezed.
They're like,
it's
oh,
wrong
actually,
aspect
we just
ratio.
exported. Yeah.
No, this is I really only had a little bit of time to kind of briefly go through this, but I couldn't find the actual new dimensions. But it does appear to be about 20% taller. So that would offer a substantial volume change, and that would also, again, put it into the same class that the military needs. And one of the things that SpaceX has been doing, notice that Starlink is so stuffed in there. SpaceX is going beyond, or it's speculated that SpaceX is kind of going beyond what they would even sell to their customers, because normally you have to have some kind of gap. We'll say, 0.3 meters between the inside of the fairing and your payload. And people are kind of sitting there going, well, I think Starlink goes beyond what they're recommending to their own customers, maybe as a way to be able to be like, hey, look, we've done all these launches and we feel comfortable now having payloads that are exactly 5 meters wide or something. And then with the stretch payload being able to have more volume too, so they can fit and fulfill literally any of these proposed contracts.
Yeah, I was going to say, did they stretch this specifically for a thing? Because it wasn't, they've done that before, right? Is it Starship or something where it was like, oh, we, NASA's like, hey, we need to do this thing. And they're like, oh, we happen to have just changed our design to fit that thing perfectly. You're like, huh, it's weird.
In general, yes. I mean, the consensus is that there's likely literally a type of payload that that fits in there, and that SpaceX is basically trying to bid and win this contract, and therefore proving that they can do this, which is really cool. You have to look at the pictures. Definitely pull it up. Tion K in our Discord has thrown the drawing into our Discord, so for those people listening in Discord can check it out. But it is a beautiful render. It looks so cool. A very SpaceX, very Tesla-looking mobile launch tower that's black and white and just super futuristic looking. So, and it should be mentioned, I know a lot of people will be asking about this, that Starship is supposed to launch from 39A, but it's not going to be launching from that mount. That mount is going to be basically exclusively for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. Starship, they're already building the flame trench, and from that picture that we were just sharing, it'd be like directly between us and the camera. Would be where the actual Starship will be launching from. So Starship will not be on the big concrete slab. It'll have its own flame trench and some flame diverter, but inside the perimeter of 39A, if that makes sense. So it'll still be launching from 39A, but it'll be on a totally separate pad, totally separate system. So
is 39A specially made for giant rockets because it was made for the Saturn V, and that's kind of why it's getting so much action now with these bigger ones?
Well, that's what's so funny about this exactly, is that you're exactly right. I mean, it's like the biggest, most overbuilt launch pad ever. It was designed potentially even to be able to do much more than the Saturn V, potentially with the, I don't know if they called it the Saturn 8 or the Nova? I don't remember, but there's an 8 F1 version. It was designed even to handle that. I'm totally blanking right now, and someone's probably screaming. But, it's designed for that. But the funny thing is, they're starting from scratch for Starship. It won't have anything. You could do what they're doing in the middle of a field. They aren't using any of the real infrastructure there of the pad itself for Starship.
It's just a symbolic use of that famous spot.
And I think there's still things that, you could probably use the liquid oxygen tanks maybe, and have that whole plumbing and farming between those kind of, some of the water deluge system can probably be used. Sure, so there's crossovers and certain efficiencies about using the same physical perimeter and same area, but it really is kind of head scratching of why are they, but still cool.
I think I do think it's cool. That's a really important launch pad in a historic sense,
Mm-hmm. And it's just cool seeing it expand out and have, this would mean hopefully we'll see more potential for Falcon Heavy missions and more missions, more Falcon 9 missions. One of the things is, I don't know if I told you guys this, but there's a mission coming up at the end of March where they're going to do a polar launch from Kennedy Space Center. So polar launches, remember, are ones that are going
south, or that would go south.
Yeah, so they'll have to go south, but look at a map and you realize they have to do some kind of crazy stuff to not be flying over land, because that's pretty much the main thing that determines, which launch sites you're launching from. Let me share this with you guys. But it's a crazy, I don't think I have a good way of looking this up, but they're going to be doing a launch that goes basically somewhere like east over here, and then like threads a needle, has to do a dog-leg maneuver and totally like pivot. And it'll be the first time since the 60s. They had done this way back in the day. And actually I'm probably getting this wrong. I need to research this. Maybe this will be a good video topic. But I'm pretty sure a cow died from rocket debris in like the 60s.
Did you say a cow?
Yes. And it literally almost
Why
started
were they trying to launch a cow?
Yeah, exactly. No.
The first farm animal in space.
They went from a chimpanzee to
what's
a cow.
next? Yeah. But yeah, it apparently like caused a lot of drama because it was like, international differences, where a cow in Cuba died because of a U.S. missile launch, basically. So that's just kind of a fun little tangent. But
Cuba and missiles, man.
I was about to say we had
maybe
a great relationship with them back then when it came to.
But I'm starting to think, originally, so Vandenberg was originally going to have a Falcon Heavy capability, and that's of course the launch pad out on the West Coast, and it would do, West Coast is way more common to do. You can fly straight south and go on your polar orbit because the California jets out to the west there, so you can fly straight south, not fly over people, no big deal, and forever, it was assumed that the launch pad out there would be able to do Falcon Heavy, and it was kind of told to us that they could do Falcon Heavy. This is making me think that maybe they're doing a lot of this stuff because it'd be cheaper for them to to launch a couple Falcon Heavy missions that, they could handle it from the west or from the East Coast and do polar launches for some of these military satellites, and that a lot of this is in preparation to try and do that. I don't exactly know, but it's just cool seeing some changes like this. So,
I still want to see a rocket take off from one part of the country and land in the other.
But you'll have to fly over people then.
I guess so, because we don't know. Because if it actually goes into orbit, it never comes back and lands.
Correct. When it's not necessarily like I mean, Starship will.
Well, okay. But how cool would that be if literally it takes off from Vandenberg, 30 minutes later, lands at Cape Canaveral or whatever, LZ-1.
Well, a lot of people ask that, as like almost a why don't they just have the Falcon 9 booster land in Africa or Europe, or whatever. And the biggest thing to me is like,
well, then how the hell are you going to get it back?
Exactly. Like now you have to load it back up on a boat anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Like
from Africa. Yeah, it's a short trip.
And would it even have?
Well, that's what the thing is. It's
juice
nowhere
to get over there.
Nowhere near. The furthest downrange is about 1,000 kilometers, and that gets you about a fifth of the way across the ocean or something. I don't know exactly, but you're not even close in that regard. So it's not like you can even do that in the first place. But even if you could, even if you could start landing on some island, like the Bahamas or something, why? Now you have to. What are you saving?
Yeah, the ship is fine.
It would just be cool, okay?
But I don't get why people are so against the ship. The ship works, and you already have a vessel to take it back to your launch pad now.
For the Starship and the future stuff, that'll be part of the thing, right? Or the idea. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing Starship. We'll rarely see a full Starship launch on anything other than like a ocean platform almost.
Yeah.
That's my guess, just because it's so big and stuff. And mark my words, I think they'll be like big, huge, like oil rig style platforms. Because that's what they showed for that point-to-point transportation thing way back in the day anyway. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. The more I think about it, I told you guys about that kind of with Boca Chica type of stuff. That I keep thinking, there's a bunch of shipyards there and oil rig builders there. And I'm just thinking, man, why don't they just make an oil rig platform basically for launching or landing?
That's also one of my hangups about the point-to-point thing with Starship is like it would take so long just to get to the platform to launch. It's almost like you might as well fly or something. I mean, right. I know it probably still works out, but
I mean, 100 kilometers away, how long does it take to get there in a Hyperloop?
Oh, yeah, Hyperloop, I guess.
That would be
5 minutes.
Literally the key is if you can have a whole boarding station, like at the New York City, downtown Manhattan, And you go there, you check in, you do all your stuff, and then all of a sudden, boop, they zip you out, 50 kilometers out into the ocean. And you get there in 5-10 minutes or whatever. You board the spacecraft and.
Or
Yeah, 50 kilometers isn't even a lot in like a car.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Joe?
I mean, just skip the Starship altogether. Just have the Hyperloop go up into the air, just launch right out of the Hyperloop, and then just catch on the other side of the world in a giant net. I mean,
why don't they just?
Yeah.
Skip some steps. I mean, can't be that
First
hard.
principles, guys. Think about it.
Hey, thanks for checking us out, guys. I hope you enjoyed this clip from our podcast.
We do a weekly show here on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe to Our Ludicrous Future, where we discuss all the things that are going to make our future totally ludicrous.
You can join us here on YouTube or at any of your favorite podcast places. Plus, if you want to get some behind-the-scenes stuff and join a cool community, you can help support the channel at patreon.com. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.